We are here with Sherry Shaban, and she is I probably should ask her what she does, but she is in the business of transformations, and she does that most specifically in the wellness space. And so, when you go on her website, you see her helping people get fit. We were just talking about how, she spends a lot of time meal prepping, and she has a whole program, a system. She's coming out with a podcast in a little bit on how to help people create transformations in their life. And, Sherry, one of the big things you mentioned, that wellness is a big part of One Life's core four, and it absolutely is, because we found that there are a ton of people who have a great success in all the other areas of our pillars. They make a ton of money, but they're overweight and obese, and they're dealing with all these other problems and issues because of that. Or they have a great marriage, right? But their business is failing, or they're not paying attention to their finances, or you can succeed in one area, but what we have found is that wellness is kind of that keystone pillar. That what we find is when someone works on that, they tend to improve. When I found that when I work out more, my business gets better. When I work out more, I'm more present in my relationships. When my wellness is improved, everything else is a lot, is enhanced. And so it's so vital. And so, so that's why we just, appreciate what you do and the things that you do. I'd love to just get started with taking us on your journey. What we found is that a lot of guests on our show, they often don't start up where they end up. Right. You can see them now and it looks like they, have had this success, but a lot of times they've had to make a couple of pit stops, or they've had to make a couple of changes along the way, or, there's been some roadblocks that they've had to overcome and get through. What's been your journey? Because I'm sure people tell you, oh my goodness, I can't do it because I don't have what you have, or I don't have, the drive, or I don't have whatever it is. Can you kind of catch us up on how Sherry became, the Sherry that you are today?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up as a child athlete. I was always very athletic, and swimming was my big sport. And that's really how I identified myself. I was the girl in class that always had to be the strongest and stronger than the boys, do most push-ups. And growing up, I was in every single sport that I could possibly put myself in. When I was 16, I was hit by a car, and that really changed everything for me. I injured my spine really badly, and I've had surgery in my back twice. The first one was when I was 17 years old. And after I had my first surgery, the doctors told me that I shouldn't train again, that possibly pregnancy would be challenging for me in the future if I ever were to become pregnant. And having listened to that advice at the time really ended up changing my life entirely. I changed my identity completely. I was hanging out with a very different crowd, started picking up a lot of different hobbies that weren't really aligned with who I was and how I grew up. And, it took me a few years to really get to the point where I just couldn't stand myself anymore. And I just couldn't recognize myself anymore. So I started coming back to the gym. At that time, back pain was a normal part of my life. I had to take medication to be able to handle the back pain and manage it at all times. But I was very, very determined to just give it a try, even though I was told it wasn't something that I should be doing again. I walked into the gym, I started picking up weights, I started copying everybody around me. And at that time, I was actually studying biochemistry. So I was in a completely different field. And after a few months of working out in the gym, I started to feel that my back pain was getting a lot less. I was coming off of the medication. I slowly started running. I bought a treadmill in my apartment and started running 5 minutes at a time until I worked my way up to about an hour, about a 10K. And that's when really things changed for me. I decided to come back to school. I wanted to learn everything there was to learn about fitness, about injury management, and to help others achieve what I was able to achieve. So obviously this goes without saying, I do have days here and there where I have to still manage my back pain, but overall, it's discovering that you can create this shift in your identity. You can create health and fitness if you overcome the obstacle, as you mentioned before, and learn that there is a way to overcome it. As long as there's a will and there's a desire to make a change, there is always a way.
Yeah, but I just want to honor you for your perseverance and your fortitude, because it's inspiring, and I'm grateful that myself and the One Life community get to share with you today. Guys, if you guys are catching us live, I'd love for you to share any questions, or more specifically, how I'd love to know just how that resonates, with you, right? I think about, for us, we or for everybody, I think that we all have these identity, dyings, really, right? Myself growing up, I was an athlete, and being 5'6" and Mexican, there was this time where I realized that I'm probably not, I probably should look to pursue something else, when college scouts weren't coming, and there was a real searching, and a real uh, existential crisis, and I was 17 at the time, right? And I think that people go through it at different stages, but we all have this moment that forces us, it's almost a forcing to look at what do we want to do with our lives. And I'm almost grateful that it happened early on, and I didn't go and play at a small time school or something like that, because I was able to really figure out what I wanted to do a lot earlier. And I am grateful for that. So looking back on it, those challenges always turn into opportunities, because that's when I started my first business, and lo and behold, 10 years later, here things are great, considering all things. But for you, I'd love to go back to that moment, when you said there was a big transition, right? And it was, you were hanging out with a different crowd, or you realized that you were doing things that weren't in alignment, or there was just a realization that you had, and then a shift that you made. And I think a lot of people in our community are all in that space. They all have this kind of awakening, and now we're in that transitioning phase. So what was that like? And was there a mentor? Was it a book? Was it a habit? Can you kind of go back to that and kind of think about that that younger you? What was it that really kept you moving through that transition phase?
Right. It's almost, I guess, hitting rock bottom. And whenever someone comes to see me when they have hit rock bottom, I find it's the best place to start from, because that's where real leverage is created. So you get to this point where you've had enough. You can't stand yourself anymore. This is just not who you are. You're not happy. You're wanting to do other things, but maybe your physical capacity is stopping you from doing those things. So it's hitting that rock bottom. It's really understanding your why, your true purpose, why you want to make a change. And that why can't be a very, short temporary goal. Like, I want to lose 10 pounds. Losing 10 pounds is a short goal. It's not a purpose. It's not a driving force. But once you do understand your driving force, and for me, as I mentioned before, it was really that the way that I viewed myself as a child. It was my inner child. I was always that active girl. I was always that strong girl. And I couldn't relate to myself anymore. So that was definitely for me my biggest driving force. But once you do find your why, then you have to start making changes in your environment. And that's then the first step, is to make sure your physical environment is going to support your purpose. Your emotional environment is going to support your purpose, your social environment. So of course, at that time, I was hanging out with a different crowd. If I were to pursue health and fitness at that point in my life, I have to also change my environment. I have to spend time with other people who are doing it, with other people who have achieved it, and make sure that I'm reading the right books. I'm reading the right magazines. I'm on, I had a biochemistry degree at the time. So all the research that I was doing was very scientifically based. I had to make sure that my sources were accurate. So it really starts with that, and of course, a strong belief that you can achieve it. If we are having negative self-talk all the time, and we have these limiting beliefs that we're focusing on, it's very difficult to make then that change. So a lot of that internal dialogue has to change. It has to change from I can't to I am already doing these things. I am that person that I desire to be. And then everything else around you has to align to make sure that that happens.
You mentioned a lot about your sources and what your intake is, right? And I think that that's one dynamic of the One Life community that we really try and provide is a source of positivity and hope, because you could scroll through your feed on any social platform and just get filled with negativity and hate, and we try and be that beacon of of hope, frankly, and not only just hope, but okay, what do we do? What do we actually do? And one thing that I have to give real credit to is our executive, our first executive director, Brian Rocha, who is now, he's moved on and is building a company out in Northern California. He stumbled upon something that I think is foundational for One Life, and that's that our fulfillment triangle. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, if our listeners are familiar with our fulfillment triangle, but I'm trying to find a picture here so that you guys can see. And wonderful here. So what we found is that success is not actually what people are searching for. We found that success is kind of fleeting, and happiness is even fleeting as well. And fulfillment is a lot more. It ends up being what people are actually chasing. And what we found is that that's at the heart of your passion, your talents, and where there's some opportunity in the marketplace. And originally, Sherry, this came about in terms of deciding someone's career and picking out what someone does with their life. And I think it's very applicable, obviously, for a lot of people. What I'm curious for you is Brian kind of realized that this same model is applicable in all of the different core four. So it's applicable for finances, right? In terms of how you make your money. It's applicable for your relationships in terms of who and where you spend your time. I'm curious for you, in terms of wellness and all the time that you've spent in that space and helping people through these journeys, do you find that something like that fulfillment triangle where your passions, what you love, your talents, what you're good at, and then opportunity, what's actually out there, does that have a place in your world? Do you see that coming up for either yourself or the people that you've been helping?
Yeah, definitely. And not just in the health and fitness garden. I think that you mentioned it initially that when you are working out, when you're taking a lot of time for your self-care during the week, it starts to impact the different areas of your life. That's also where the fulfillment is. When we train, we show ourselves unbelievable discipline. It hurts to work out. It's uncomfortable to work out. There is a lot of effort that is put towards that. And beyond that, there's also effort that's put in our schedule. So I have to create an identity around my health and fitness. That means I have to schedule it in. I have to make sure that I'm scheduling in my grocery shopping, my meal prepping. I have to make sure that when I'm at a restaurant, I'm making the right decisions, that I'm constantly putting in that effort in order to sustain that identity. And when I train, I'm also very mindful. And we are addicted to working out because we are addicted to being in the now, in the moment. When you're training, you have a very strong mind, body, holistic connection, an emotional connection, a spiritual connection. And once you tap into that, then you realize that I can create that exact same connection in my other areas of life, whether that's my financials, whether that's my relationships. And I understand what it means to be in the now, to really just not focus on what happened yesterday and what's coming tomorrow, but really right now in this moment. And obviously working out makes you more confident. You're feeling, not just good because the endorphin release, but you're feeling good inside your body. You're feeling more aligned. You're exerting energy. You're able to have an outlet to release energy. And again, that impacts your relationship. That impacts you walking into a meeting or doing an investment and having that confidence around creating a business, whatever it is in your life. So we're always chasing happiness, but the truth is, it is now. It is really you being in the present moment right now and appreciating everything that you have. When you're training, instead of focusing on how much it hurts or how this is a punishment for what we ate the day before or how this is a punishment for not wanting to look a certain way, it's about honoring your body and being able to appreciate the fact that you have legs that work, that you have a body that is able to fuel the things that you want to do. So with regards to the triangle, yes, absolutely. Training, I find is the one garden. It is, and not because I'm biased, of course, but it's the one garden that really impacts the other aspects of your life. And you mentioned it before, you could have the wealth, but if you don't have the health, then what is the point, right? How can we appreciate adventures if we're unable to climb the mountain? And how can we appreciate relationships if I don't feel right in my body and I don't feel right in my confidence?
Yeah. It reminds me of that quote from Socrates, and I looked it up so I didn't misquote it. It says, "It's a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable." And he says man, but I think it's it's a shame for anybody to grow old without seeing what they're capable of and being at that, at that peak. So what I really enjoy about what you've done is you seem to make it really tactical, and doing kind of some research. You kind of have the how-to laid out, and it seems like you have a system for creating these transformations. I'm a big fan of Hal Elrod, and he was one of my original coaches and mentors, and he was a big fan of making miracles practical and making miracles, giving you control to create miracles in a variety of capacities. It seems like you've done the same with transformations. So when someone is looking to have, whatever kind of transformation that is, what do you think is most important, or what are the ingredients, or kind of what goes into that whole process?
Right. So I'm a very big fan of Hal Elrod as well, and the Miracle Morning is definitely something that I share with my athletes. My athletes are the clients that I work with. But coming back to that, it's really about focusing your energy. So transformation happens when we focus our energy on the things that we had mentioned earlier about our physical environment, our social environment, our spiritual environment. And what that basically means is creating an atmosphere around you that will constantly support the goal that you want. It's easy to say, I want to lose 10 pounds. That's easy to do. In fact, we can all do it, because when we set a goal to lose a certain amount of weight, we will achieve it. But that's just the problem itself, is that when we set a goal to lose 10 pounds or to run a marathon, as soon as that goal is achieved, we stop working around it because it's done. So instead of saying, I want to lose 10 pounds, then we reshift and sort of reframe the goal and say, I want to become a person who is 10 pounds lighter. And the moment I say that, I now shift everything in my life to support that. I now have to think about, who is a person who's 10 pounds lighter? Is this a person who is watching Netflix until 1 a.m. and munching on snacks? Is this a person who doesn't exercise? Is this a person who doesn't make time to meal prep or doesn't make time to eat clean? What types of food does this person eat rather? So whenever we're thinking about a shift in sort of this transformation, we have to look at the identity. And the identity is not just around how well I can stick to a meal plan and how many times a week I can train. Because the truth is, that stuff's online. Everybody can find a meal plan online for free. And there's all kinds of workouts on Instagram and on YouTube. And if it was as simple as that, then we would all be ripped, walking around with six packs and not needing to work out or to find a coach or to get guidance. But transformation is really an identity shift. It's changing everything around your life, as mentioned, to support that goal. That means I have to always audit who I'm spending time with. I have to make sure that I take advice from people who are doing it, not just people who like to talk, because the truth is, everybody has an opinion. I have to make sure that my physical environment also supports my goal. I don't have things in my fridge that don't serve me. I don't have things around my workplace that don't serve me or that tempt me to have. I want to make sure that I get enough sleep. I want to make sure that I am keeping my stress levels in check. What does an athlete do? An athlete eats to fuel their training. An athlete walks into the gym to perform. An athlete's not beating themselves up around how they look or what they ate the day before. An athlete is focused on training for performance, focused on getting enough sleep to be able to recover. And so once we start to shift into more of an identity around what the system needs to be to stay at the goal that we want, to stay at the result that we want, to maintain it, then we're able to have transformation.
Yeah, you talk about setting up your environment, and I think that's a big part of the, of creating the vision. And we in relationships, we talk about your posse and who you surround yourself with that's going to support you, and that includes with the food that you eat and the things that you drink and the time that you go to bed. I think all of those things play a role in our in our success in that regard. You broke it down to I think a few, like three, like what I maybe are your pillars, right? And I think it was nutrition. I think some form of exercise. I think you classified it. I'm probably saying the word wrong. And then some sort of like rehabilitation. Excuse me if I'm missing the words
No,
here.
you're
But there,
good. You're,
but there are kind of three, branches that you had talked about. Can you kind of go into those? Because I think that you broke it down really simply, and I think if people can think about their wellness and kind of these simple buckets, if you will, it might make it a little easier for some of the listeners.
yeah, for sure. So nutrition, fitness, and then therapy. But the therapy also includes the mindset. It also includes your spiritual connection as well. So with fitness, we have to make sure that we're looking at a regimen that is effective, that is efficient, that is fun to do. And that could be something different for each person. But we also have to know that there are certain types of exercises that give us different benefits. If I want to improve my flexibility, I can't get that from strength training. If I want to improve my strength, I can't get that from yoga, for example. So I have to understand that there are different tools that will allow me to achieve what I would like to achieve. In the past when I was younger, I had 2 hours to spend at the gym because I didn't have kids. I wasn't running a business. I had all kinds of time in the world. So I need to now realistically look for a program that fits my lifestyle, that I'm able to fit in, and that's also efficient, that's also fun to do so that I don't get bored. And maybe that also means that I have a community around me. Maybe I'm doing it with friends, maybe I'm in an online program that has a group and I have a lot of accountability and support around it. So making sure that what I am doing is something that I can sustain is super key when it comes to fitness. And then as well for nutrition, we're still in this diet mindset here in North America or in the Western world where we are very restrictive around certain foods. One month fats are bad, another month carbs are bad, another month we should all be vegan, and there are all these trends. And the truth is, when it comes to nutrition, it really is a very simple approach, and it's around eating whole foods. It's around eating clean. And what that means is choosing foods more often that serve you, foods that are not man-made, foods that come off of a tree, foods that come from nature. And the more that we just focus on that and we stop restricting ourselves and creating these feelings of restrictions and scarcity around food that cause us to binge or cause us to feel guilty or to create negative emotions and relationships with food, then we're also able to sustain it long term. If I'm going to remove carbs from my diet and try the keto thing, if it's not something that I can see myself doing long term, then I probably shouldn't try it. I should make habits around things that make sense for me in my lifestyle, and definitely habits that I can sustain long term. And then for the therapy, it's kind of the last little piece that holds everything together. We all have something. We all have an obstacle that's standing in the way of our health and fitness. And for some of us, that's an injury. And for some of us, that is maybe a disease that we're dealing with. But for most of us, though, it really is our mindset. It's our limiting beliefs. It's what we believe growing up around things that we can't do or that we can't achieve. And so as I was saying before, it's easy to find a training program online and a nutrition program online, but if I'm dealing with these limiting beliefs that are preventing me from creating massive change in my identity, then I'll always yo-yo back and forth between different programs or different types of diets. So really making sure that my goals are around creating a new identity, creating a new system that I can put into my schedule, a new lifestyle will help me sustain that long term.
Yeah. I want to honor some of our live viewers here. Sterling is one of our One Life certified guides. Miranda Jane Hansen, who's a longtime One Life supporter. And, in seeing that, I'd like to honor some of them, Sherry, and kind of play devil's advocate for a second and say, once again, yeah, but you look like you've always been a go-getter. You look like you've always been able to run through walls. And, I know you've been doing this now. That what I appreciate is that you've taken this outside of yourself and now been helping people. So I know there's someone out there who's saying, yeah, but I can't do that. I have all of these things standing in my way. I have 2 kids, right? I have 2 kids, but so I know what that's like, and I know how that impacts your fitness. Or they're building a business, and I know what that's like, and I know how that can impact your fitness. So can you think of a story of someone, or maybe an experience that you had that of overcoming those external challenges, and what they had to do, and how that was actually the harder part? I'm sure that part, removing those barriers, was actually harder than the actual fitness journey, than the actual working out part. Is there any stories?
Yeah, for sure. Many stories, and it's probably the same story I hear on a daily basis around not having enough time or being really busy, because I think we all say those words all the time. But it really comes down to owning it. And owning it is taking full responsibility. And it is a mind shift. It really is deciding that instead of blaming my lack of time on my kids or my lack of time on my busy schedule, I'm just going to own it, and I'm going to take responsibility, and thus take the power and realize that this is actually my choice. I have two kids, and I bring them to school every morning. I make their lunches for them every morning. I pick them up after school. I bring them to gymnastics. And for me, that is non-negotiable. I have made a commitment to myself that that is non-negotiable, that I need to pick up my kids. I have to show up as a mom. And if I think of other things in my week too that I've decided are non-negotiable, I treat them the exact same way. So for me to say the words, I don't have time, really translates to, it's not that important to me. It's not a priority. I think we all don't have time. We're all really busy in our lives. But the difference between those that are making it happen and those that are not is really coming down to the ownership. It's the taking the power. If I can take the power of this situation, that means I can make a change. I can control it. I can put it in my schedule. Every Sunday night, I plan out my week. I know when my trainings are. I know how long it's going to take me to shower and to get ready for work. I know when I'm going to do my groceries. I know when I'm going to meal prep. All of these things are in my schedule non-negotiably. The only time that something can ever get in the way of that is if there's an emergency with my kids, if there's a fire somewhere. Again, it's a commitment to self that I've decided that I'm going to make this change. And I can't make this change if I never get to the point where I make it non-negotiable. And how do I make it non-negotiable? Well, I have to find my why. I have to find my purpose. I have to find the leverage that's going to drive that change.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that, Sherry. I appreciate it. I needed that, as did, I'm sure, a lot of our listeners. So guys, I want to give you guys the opportunity, if you guys are catching this live, to throw down any questions that you have for Sherry. As we're kind of, rounding out the last part of the call. And then if you guys are catching this on a replay, of course, we'll do our best to come back and answer those. But Sherry, what are, looking to the future, right? Looking to, once again, I think people create these obstacles in their head, but in listening to people and what they've been saying, since lockdown and COVID, our gyms are shut down. There's nowhere to work out, or, there's all these things that are changing. What do you see for the next 6 months, year, kind of for your world, and how people are adapting, right? I know you have a transformation program that you run. I know that we have a few people in our community who are kind of shifted their all of their trainings online. But how are things, getting better for people in the fitness world as we kind of move through and hopefully pass this whole COVID thing?
That's a really great question. And to be honest, there's a lot of talk about how now fitness is going online and it's only going to be online. And now gyms are closed and gyms are doomed and personal trainers are doomed and all that. And, the way that I look at it is truly that these are two different demographics. There is the type of person that wants to be, autonomous, that wants to train online, that wants to follow a program, that maybe is not interested in coming to the gym. I had launched my online program before COVID happened, so I was already working with this type of athlete. And there is the other type of athlete that likes the personable approach, that likes the community feel, that likes the physical space. And I don't feel that we can ever take that away from them. I've reopened my gym now since June, and it's definitely a completely different world. We walk in with masks, and we're spraying everything, we're keeping our distance. I'm a very huggy person. I'm very used to hugging everybody. And now I'm actually finding that the hardest thing is to keep the distance, but we are all adapting. And I feel that now more than ever is a huge need to move and to want to come in and socialize. So I don't think that we're doomed. I think this is a hiccup in time and we're going to get over it. And eventually we're going to be able to go back and run things that the way that they were. I'm also an osteopath. I treat people manually with my hands. And to say that, this type of service would become obsolete and that everything would go online, I don't really agree with that. I think that as humans, we still want that interaction. We still want that physical interaction and that emotional, energetic interaction that we get from seeing each other. I know that One Life has events, imagine that you never had in-person events and everything was online. There's something so special about being in that room and cheering on with everybody else that you just can't exactly get online. And I am very grateful for the online space. I'm very grateful that we have this. I have a lot of athletes that tried to come online after the gym closed and it just wasn't for them. So definitely I see it as two different types of athletes and two different types of worlds.
Yeah, totally. My wife is a very social person, and similarly, I think people they're just waiting until the time when they can go back to being around people, because like you said, energetically, I think it's a very necessary thing for people. Me, on the other hand, I have my kettlebell in my closet and I'm okay, and I can do I can do it on my own.
Yeah, and you know what? That kind of comes back to the owning it. I heard also from a lot of people, I need a gym to work out. As soon as COVID happened, everything stopped. They stopped training, they stopped moving, they stopped putting in effort and mindfulness around their nutrition. And the story was, I need a gym. But the truth is, we also have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible. And you are your gym. You are the machine. Whether that means you're training inside a gym, inside a physical space, or just using your body weight, comes back down to what is my identity? What is my health identity? I'm a person that works out, period. Whether that means it's COVID or whether that means it's a zombie apocalypse, I'm a person who trains as part of my week. So I think we also can very easily get caught up again in creating the stories and the excuses and the reasons not to do things. But what if COVID lasts 2 or 3 years? What if this keeps going on? We don't know. And what if it develops into something else and there's another pandemic? We don't know that. But what I do know is that I will always be true to myself. And that definitely comes from just owning it and really making sure I take responsibility for all of my decisions in my week.
Yeah, absolutely. Sherry, is there anything that we haven't touched on today? I'm so impressed with you and how much I look down and how much you've thrown into, a 35-minute episode. I think is a credit to your talent and your experience. Is there anything that we've missed or anything that should be said that we haven't got to today?
I feel like we could probably keep talking for a couple of hours, but I would like to say that if anybody watching this or hearing this is feeling stuck and feeling like there is something in their way, and again, whether that's an injury or a limiting belief, there really is a way to overcome it. And it's not you. It's not that you're lazy, and it's not that you can't follow a meal plan and you're not disciplined, but there's something deeper than that. I was working with an athlete. I started private training with her maybe a few years ago. And every single time I would give her an exercise, she would always make a comment around how she couldn't do it, how it was so hard, how she's not coordinated. And after several months of working with her, just as I was about to tell her, I don't think this is a right fit, she admits to me that she was voted as most unathletic in her high school. So in her high school yearbook, she was voted as the most unathletic with a picture of herself. And of course, during a time of her life where she's the most influential. So I just want to come back to this point and say that sometimes it really is that limiting belief. And it may not even be something that you came up with, but something that someone else gave you. And if that's the case, then I think that we have to work on our inner child and we have to come down back to our basics of taking responsibility and really changing our mindset. And you can. Anything that you say is true, whether you are saying something positive about yourself or something negative about yourself, both are true. It takes a little bit more effort to say something positive because we always default to the negative, but it definitely can be done, and we can shift our identity at any time.
Yeah, the theme that I've kind of heard throughout, and maybe this is something that's, a theme for you, I'd imagine it is the mindset, and how the mindset is, how someone's mindset is greater than any tactic, frankly, and I found that going back and looking at those limiting beliefs, and also I think it's a point to look at, those experiences that had a profound effect. I always joke about, so much of my insecurity came because my third grade crush, rejected me in third grade. Since then I go, I'm ugly. I must be ugly. She didn't like me. And it's just so silly, how I look back and I'm going through sales training, and I'm dealing with all these rejection, all this rejection, and all these things are coming up, and I'm wondering why, what is it? And it was, so taking a look at those experiences and rewriting those experiences and kind of giving yourself a new perspective on those events, I think is so helpful in kind of unlocking that gate. So then, now I'm sure, after she kind of came to terms with that, high school thing,
Right.
she was able to move past it in a way, whereas it was, I'm sure something that held her back for so, obviously up until then, and I can only imagine
Right.
that there was a number of years there.
Well, first of all, you're very handsome. And second of all, it is awareness. It's really awareness. It's, oh yeah, actually, let's be honest. It really was that moment that somebody said that to me. And, my advice is just go hang out with a bunch of third graders. And, imagine they're saying something to you, like, you'd be like, what are you talking about? Yet we're still stuck there, you know? So yes, after we started, after she became aware of that limiting belief, we started, adapting to it. And it wasn't until the moment she jumped on a box that everything changed for her. And now she is unstoppable. She's very committed to the gym. Even all throughout COVID, she was working out on her own. She came back to the gym. And it really just comes down to that point of, you know what, that truly was that defining moment for me. And if I'm not aware of it, then I can't make a change.
Absolutely. Sherry, I just selfishly, I have to thank you for this conversation, because I know I had so many ahas. I have a couple of pages of notes. Guys, if you guys are catching this live or the replay, I'd love for you to share what resonated most with you. And Sherry she's active online. You can catch her on Instagram at Sherry Shaban, right? Is that the one?
Sherry Shaban Fitness.
Sherry Shaban Fitness. And then her website is sherryshaban.com. So SHERRY, Shaban, SHABAN.com. And she's got all of her things up there. I mentioned there's a podcast coming out in a little bit. So so cool that she's now taking, that you're now taking this and putting it out for more people to find. What I do love about the internet is that it allows us to reach, so many more people. What's beautiful about the One Life community is we've found a way to span, all the continents except Antarctica, and we're, searching for a penguin out there or something like that to help. So it's beautiful to see you and you taking your journey to the next level. And I want to commend you for that as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do and all of the greats that you do for the world and all that you bring. So I've been watching One Life for a while, and I'm a huge fan and appreciate to be a part of this community. Thank you.
Yeah, we need more people like you, and those of you guys who are listening, we just wrapped up. We're right in the middle of actually One Lifing the Salvation Army, and so I don't know if you guys are aware. A lot of our listeners aren't. We are taking the One Life program, and over the last 30 days, we've basically assembled 30 events that we've done what we're going to complete over the next couple of months. And so if you have an organization, a community, a nonprofit, or just someone who needs hope and one lifing, we would encourage you guys to reach out to us. Send us an email at info@onelifefullylived.org, and we will do our best to do that. We've recently, like I mentioned, working with Salvation Army. We're working with an organization in Detroit that works with unhoused people to give them the One Life tools. So there's a lot of opportunity to bring the One Life to your community. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today on these Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, we have a Teaching Tuesday, and then these are going up on our podcasts and our YouTube as well. So make sure you subscribe in all the places, and we'll see you on our next one. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
We're gonna live it now.